Be careful what you wish for. You may find it. Such is the case of the trial of Troxdale, Upton, and Stevens for us. Last week, we gave all the information available about the trial from the Tennesseean, the only source we could find at the time. It seems that, quite by accident, we found the details behind the conviction of the 3 co-conspirators in the Supreme Court case. Come along with us as we dive deeper into the evidence of the murders of the O'Neill family in Overton, Tennessee. All aboard the Kentucky-Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine for our flight back in time, but it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we need a bigger vehicle to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. First things first. We will begin with the plea for a new trial before the Supreme Court of Tennessee. For reference, the following evidence was found in the Tennessee Reports, page 257. We have left a link to this in the description box below. Quote, Troxdale et L.V. The State. Nashville, December 1848. New trial in a criminal case because of the incompetency of a juror. Affidavits. A new trial should be granted upon a conviction for murder. On the affidavit of 2 persons that one of the jurors had told them before the trial that from the best information he could get, he was of opinion the defendants ought to be hung. Citing Howerton v. State, Meigs 262, and cited in Brakefield v. State, 1 Sneed 219. New trial, charge of court. In a doubtful case, although the charge of court may not be anything erroneous, yet if it not be sufficiently clear and explicit on a matter of law about which the jury may have been misled, the Supreme Court will grant a new trial. As where the judge announced correctly the general principle applicable to testimony corroborative of that of an impeached witness, but failed to inform the jury what kind of testimony would be in law be corroborative. Cited in Crawford v. State, 4 Code W 195. 411. Patsy Troxdale, Nicholas Stevens, and William Upton were indicted for the murder of Edward O'Neill and Sarah O'Neill, his wife, and their 5 children on the 15th day of September, 1846. The persons murdered were the father, mother, brothers, and sisters of the defendant, Patsy Troxdale. The murder is charged in the indictment to have been committed with an axe. The defendants pleaded jointly not guilty, and a jury was impaneled by the presiding judge, Marchbanks, to try them jointly, and the proof was submitted accordingly. Unquote. So, now we know a little bit more about the grounds for the appeals that the lawyer chose to take to the Supreme Court of Tennessee. It seems that there were some discrepancies in the trial that needed to be addressed. But first, let's go over the evidence that the Tennessean overlooked and called minute. Items found inside of the burnt cabin. The entire building, it seems, had not burned down to the ground. There were still some items that were found in and around the site, and we have a list of what they were. Turning to the Tennessee Reports, page 257, we read the following. Quote, in the fodder house were found various articles. A dress filled with old feathers, another filled with cotton and woolen thread. In the loft, a quilt. There was also a box found which contained a testament in which was a deed to her father for the land on which he resided. In a top stack near the house was a spinning wheel, and in the weeds there was found a bed tick, which Patsy took off immediately when it was discovered. There was blood on her petticoat and chemise. Unquote. Let's go over these things a little. A dress filled with feathers and another one used to store cotton and woolen thread? Why? Unless the stored items were used for making things like quilts and pillows for the family. But it does seem a little unusual to keep the feathers, woolen thread, and cotton in a dress. Unless the dresses were old and no longer wearable and repurposed as a container. Some Appalachian women take old baby clothes and aprons and make clothespin hangers with them. I do this myself instead of throwing out the no longer usable garment. And another thing that could be connected with these items is that Mrs. O'Neill might have sold these things on the market to make extra money. How do we know this? By the finding of the spinning wheel. While we could not find a modern translation of a top stack, we can maybe guess that this was a refuge pile. That maybe Patsy resented that she had to help her mother spin thread. What could have been seen by Patsy's mother as a way to provide income for the family could have been seen as useless waste of time to her daughter. For all we know, Mrs. O'Neill could have been storing up the extra cotton, woolen thread, and feathers to sell at the market. It would have made sense if she did this to barter for material for quilts and clothing, or to sell outright to other ladies to have money to help with the expenses of running a household. It would not be that unusual to find a quilt in the loft. In the winter months, a lot of people use the lofts to sleep in because of heat rises. And to keep warm during the bitter Appalachian cold months of the year, heat is an essential asset for survival. And this happened to be in the early part of September. It is not out of the realm of possibility that in 1846 September was getting chilly, and so everyone was starting to move up into their lofts to sleep at night. But here's the thing. The quilt was left, but the bed tick was missing. Why? We get into that in a minute. A box that contained a testament. Bibles were a family's most prized possession. Old Bibles are passed down from generation to generation. They often contain the births and death records of family members. However, did the box belong to Edward, his wife Sarah, or to Patsy? And who placed the deed in the box, and why? This piece of evidence will be important to the conviction of Patsy O'Neill Troxdale, because it seems that this might have been one of the motives behind the murders. We will get more into the box and the testimony a little later in the story. The last thing that was found was a bed tick in the weeds. A bed tick is not a small insect. In fact, they are often called tick mattresses. They are a large bag of stiff, tightly woven fabric that is filled with straw or other materials to put on a bed to lay on. These are often used in string beds to help soften the bed when the person is laying down on the strings instead of a box spring. So, why is it laying out in the weeds? There could be a couple of explanations. These were very hard to come by unless you made them yourself. It could be that Patsy thought of this as a luxury item. It also could be that this was her way of throwing her family out into the dust. It is very telling that the family mattress was thrown out to the weather, where it could have gotten wet and damaged. But then again, if she took it to where she was sleeping, it could have pointed a finger as to motive. But it is also very telling that when it was found, she took off immediately. Did it contain something that Patsy didn't want to be found by those who were looking for evidence? The last sentence in the paragraph says a whole lot. Quote, "There was blood on her petticoat and chemise," unquote. Now, I am pretty sure that Patsy was not asked to take her dress off in front of the whole community. Were the items found inside of the bed tick, or were they found in her belongings? Or was Patsy asked to remove her outer clothing in front of a group of women? We simply do not know. But the findings of the blood on her underclothes do certainly point to her being a criminal behind the crime of murder. And we are pretty sure that the location and the amount in which the blood was found couldn't be explained away by monthly periods. In next week's video, we will get into the testimony of Christina Hensley. How did she know Patsy? Why was she a witness for the prosecution? And could her story be believed by the jury? Thank you. Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the myths and legends of the Appalachian Mountains. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. Please be sure to double check that you are subscribed, as some of our viewers are finding that they are no longer subscribed to our channel. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.